I think I've always been an Anglophile since I was a kid, even though I had no idea what the term meant. I promise this is my final video based on traveling to England, to London. Uh, but I wanted to kind of close it off with an overview. This last trip that you've probably seen in the videos over the last week that I bombarded you with, bombings of London, bombing you with London. Is that too soon? Um, but I love going to London. I love going to a city. But I thought I'd sort of bring it all together. 6 trips to London since 1978. And I decided to pull records that I pretty much got in London, or records that are the biography of that year in London. And I realized it really changed going back from obviously 78 to 1980, and then jump fast forward to the early 2000s when it was all about the CD. And I realized I didn't buy as many CDs when I went to London. I would buy some hits packages and collections and things, because pretty much everything I wanted to get, it wasn't there were a lot of differences in CDs from my point of view. So, but I'll just talk about those trips briefly as we go from 1978 to 2024. 6 trips to London. I won't concentrate on this current one because you've seen that one so many times, and some of these stories you've heard. But this is kind of like think of this as a comp of various stories from different videos and different stories over the years, uh, culled together in the streets of London and England. 1978, I believe it was March or early April. I get picked up by a friend at Heathrow Airport. Get in the car, he turns the radio on, and this song was playing. This is Kate Bush's Wuthering Heights. Never heard of Kate Bush, never heard a voice like that. I smiled. I thought this was the coolest, kookiest, bizarre thing. And it was, if it wasn't at the top of the charts when I heard it, it was coming close to the top of the charts. And this is the kind of single that would never have been in the top 10 in the US during that period, maybe never, really. It's amazing how she's sort of captured America with Running Up the Hill from the TV show Stranger Things, even though that record did okay in America, but she was never big in America. I think that's a running theme of some of these, well, not all of these, but a few of these artists, things that are big in England. It's amazing what hits the charts in England. Now, obviously, it's not all about charts. It's about music I like, but I just love this. So I went to Oxford Street to HMV the next day, and I picked this exact 45 up. I didn't get the album till a long time later. Just to give you a sense, this is the British cover, the British album of The Kick Inside, that contains Wuthering Heights. And of course, I just love this song, saxophone song, and the beautiful man with the child in his eyes. And I realized, I think that was a song that the label really wanted to push as an initial single, but Kate, you know, steadfast, decided that she really wanted Wuthering Heights, the more out there, more creative song, not the simple ballad. But what a gorgeous album. I've been a Kate Bush fan ever since. All in. Biggest regret of mine when I first moved to Seattle 10 years ago, right after that I didn't grab a ticket or try to grab a ticket and see her the month she played in England, that performance. I would have loved to have seen that. Also on the radio, in the car, we heard London Town. And this was the new Paul McCartney record of the time, 1978. And I picked this up. I don't remember if I picked this up at the Virgin Megastore or at HMV. Doesn't really matter, does it? But this is my British edition of this song. When they were a trio, Wings was a trio. There's a famous Tower Bridge. It was a perfect, out of all the Paul McCartney records, perfect that this is the one that came out during my first trip, just because of the concept, the name. There's some folk things in here. I quite like this record. I think it's one that bubbles under and not as loved, although it does has Girlfriend that was later covered by Michael Jackson. So, London Town, very English record for Paul McCartney. Another record I picked up, and I had been a fan of this gentleman. I saw his very first show when he first came to America. KSAN Radio in San Francisco broke this artist. First played Elvis Costello in America, KSAN, and he played the Old Waldorf. Very first show in America ever, I saw Elvis Costello. But of course, in 1978, this year's model came out with various covers of Elvis Costello in different positions with the Hasselblad 2.25 camera. He's there, and there's a whole series. If you're a collector, you could get all these different cover variations. But this is my Radar Records, I believe. Is it Radar or XL or something, or F-Beat, you know, crossing over there of which album it is. But I love Elvis Costello. I like all his work, but these first three records, of course, this is an amazing record with Pump It Up and I Don't Want to Go to Chelsea, and just a powerful record, and I just love that I picked this one up in 1978. My first trip to Europe ever. Then I would leave these records in London with my friend and gallivant around for a couple months around the continent. That was 1978. 1980. I went back in 1980 because my good friend David in 1979 went to England, and like me, went to Abbey Road and went to the sites, went to Liverpool, and would ask the people there at the tourist bureaus, where is this Beatle thing? And they would say, there's nothing here to see. There's no Beatle sites. Especially in Liverpool, they were kind of like still pissed off that the Beatles left for London. So that's when we decided to do the book, the Beatles, that became the Beatles England. So in 1980, I believe it was June, maybe July, I'm not sure, of 1980, we went all over England, Liverpool, down south, the Westmoreland Airfield, photographed, did some research, stayed with Alan Williams in Liverpool, who was the Beatles' first manager. We went to Hamburg, Amsterdam. We went all over, and we researched and photographed the book. But of course, I picked up some records. And I remember, again, this was in the Virgin Megastore. There was 2 albums side by side. Now, one of them I don't have the original. For some reason, I don't have my original UK copy. But I hadn't heard of these 2 bands at the time, and these are the debut album. And I bought them because I thought the names of these bands were just so perfect and so wonderful. One is Crocodiles by Echo and the Bunnymen. I remember sitting in the stack there with one copy up. Echo and the Bunnymen. I laughed out loud. I thought that was the coolest name. I hadn't heard anything, but I bought it. And the other one is the Psychedelic Furs. Now, this is the American cover. Unfortunately, I don't have my original British cover artwork, but this is a wonderful, with India, Sister Europe. I just love that buildup of India, how it kind of has a slow build of Richard Butler's voice. And I ended up seeing these artists once I got home, and they first came to America on their first tour, and I just loved them. Echo and the Bunnymen. Another band around that time would be The Cure. I got into seeing them first time in San Francisco as well. So these 2 albums were very important in 1980 to me, and buying these records in the UK and these bands. I was fans of these 2 bands for most of the duration, especially Echo and the Bunnymen, another Liverpool band I picked up that just blew my mind. And I don't remember where I heard it. If I first heard it in the UK, obviously I had their first album, and this was Love Will Tear Us Apart. This is the original UK 12-inch single, one of the great singles ever made. Of course, this Manchester band, Ian Curtis, who would take his life literally just before they were to come to America on their first tour. And then obviously Joy Division kind of morphed into another band called New Order. A little more, the first New Order record I got, and I really loved that record, and it seemed an extension of this, and they got more obviously electronic and a different band, and I liked them, but I never really kind of loved them like I loved Joy Division. And I have all the UK copies of Closure, all the first few projects and comps and things that I got out of the UK in the early 80s, and what a fantastic record. I just love Peter Saville's design. He did these simple designs with these wonderful found photographs and artwork, especially on Closer and that. Also in 1980, David and I, one night, we went to the movies, to the theater, the movies, and we saw the Julian Temple film, The Great Rock and Roll Swindle, which it really, literally, it's the perfect name for this. It's a bizarre, if you haven't seen the documentary on the Sex Pistols, it's not great, but it's a record of a time, and this is a record of a time, movie record. They go hand in hand. Of course, as they were filming this and putting this, Malcolm McLaren was putting this film together, Johnny Lydon leaves the band, and so he has to cobble this together from tapes and adding overdubs from Glenn Matlock, and it's just basically this is a hodgepodge of weird shit, of solo shit, of who killed Bambi, right? Was it David Briggs? I think Ronnie Briggs, Ronnie Briggs, also on here. Malcolm McLaren singing, Steve Jones, of course, Paul Cook. The voice of the Sex Pistols is hardly on here at all. Of course, you got My Way, the Sid Vicious. I mean, this is a shit show of a record and a film, but I did pick this up in the UK probably the next day after we saw the film. I don't know why, but it seemed like the perfect souvenir for 1980, picking this up in London. So that was 1980. Many years gone by, and I don't know why I didn't go back to London until 2002. In 2002, I went to London because I got tickets to see the concert for George at the Royal Albert Hall. Went to London for a week. I hadn't been to London since 1980. And this was 22 years later. And I got tickets online. Someone was selling them like a Craigslist thing, I think, and it turned out the woman was an American who had a English family. She lived in the UK, but she had a bank still in San Francisco. So she says, deposit the money in this account at the bank. And I physically, and then I'll meet you at this cafe the day before the show. I can't believe I trusted her. I think I did some kind of research, or whatever the research was then, in 2002. And sure enough, get to England next day. I meet her at the cafe. She hands me the ticket. And I ended up sitting with her and her extended family. I think there was like 7 of them. She had 8 tickets, and I was the 8th. And it was 9th row on the stage left. So when Paul McCartney was at the piano, I could see right there. It was one of the most amazing experiences I ever saw. Obviously, this came out a couple years later. London was familiar to me, even 22 years later. The layout of at least central London, I'd walked my ass off like I did last week in London. It was so great. I remember when this happened, I got the Royal Albert Hall early, and there's a entrance that says artist entrance, and there was a doorman there, and people kind of were walking in, and around to the right, I remember, was the main entrance, and people were mulling around there, hundreds, thousands maybe, of people. I hadn't let people in yet. So I just walked up to that entrance, and there was maybe 6, 7 people there, and I showed my ticket, and the guy just let me walk in. So I think I was in the theater for about 45 minutes to an hour before they let the masses in. I got the program. Obviously, the soundtrack in the movie came out a couple of years later. I just love this. I love, there's the cut with the interviews. I like the one, just the show itself. It was so amazing. It was one of the best nights of my life musically, maybe second only to The Last Waltz, or maybe even more than The Last Waltz in so many ways, because it was this tribute. But I had never been to the Royal Albert Hall, and I remember walking around the perimeter upstairs. There was a champagne bar or something, or a cocktail bar, going and having a drink, and looking through the opening doorways, I guess, down to the empty stage. There were people mulling around, but they hadn't let the masses in yet. You could smell incense, and you had the saffron and the purple, the colors like this, all around there. I mean, the feel of, the Indian music, and you felt the spirit. As spiritual as I am or am not, religiously, I have a spiritual side, and this was one of those moments that spoke to me. And of course, if you haven't seen this, you owe it to yourself to watch this DVD or Blu-ray of this concert, because it's just beautiful. I went to London 3 times in like a 4-year period. 2 years later, 2004, I really wanted to go to London for my 50th birthday, and Michelle and my son Joseph and I went. I took us, and that was my birthday present to myself and my family. And we went. We had a really wonderful time. We stayed in central London again. We didn't journey out of London, and 3 of us would walk around. We'd go to the Tate Modern, and we go to, I think, which was fairly new then, as I recall. We went to all the National Portrait Gallery, British Museum. Went to museums, and there were parts of the day where I would go out looking for music and just walking around London. Went to I took my son on the Abbey Road tour, the London Walks tour, and it was just really great to have him be a part of it. It was one of the best times in London. Every time I've been to London, I've had a great time in a different time, and that's what's great about it. Just a great walking city, like New York City. Musically, this was the CD era. I remember picking some comps out, but I want to show an artist that I think his first album was in 2000, but 2002 and 2004, a series of CDs came out. This is the CD era. And I remember one of them, I think I got one of them in London during one of my trips. So the 2002 trip and 2004 trip musically overlap. So this artist goes back, and that is Badly Drawn Boy. These are beautiful records. I never picked these up on vinyl. I didn't even look for these this time on vinyl. But these records mean a lot to me, because I remember, I guess this was the time of the Walkman. Did I have the CD Walkman then? I don't even remember now. But walking around London and picking up and listening to this CD, I just like the feel of Badly Drawn Boy, the movie about a boy that came out, I think, in 2002. Am I getting that right? But, again, 2000 to 2002, 2004, these records came out. And Badly Drawn Boy did the soundtrack to this, a great Hugh Grant. Just a wonderful movie. I love that movie, and it's a perfect movie about London. It gives really a nice take about, father, son, not really father to the son, to the boy, but about a boy and his growing up and not fitting in, but fitting in. And anyway, long story. Go see the movie if you haven't. Great soundtrack. And of course, there's also this one. This is Have You Fed the Fish on this Badly Drawn Boy. I picked this up. I didn't know it had come out. I think it came out a few months earlier. All right, I totally missed it. Morrissey, You Are the Quarry. I mean, he's gone through different labels. This is part of BMG, I think, at this point. I can't keep up. But I will say, as much as a wanker he can be, I adore his records. I love this record. His solo records are fantastic. He is problematic in so many ways. I'm not going to get into that in this video. Of course, the lead singer of the Smiths and the co-writer with Johnny Marr. And I know, as I recall, this is kind of a larger, almost like a Japanese issue that was a limited edition, I think, at first. And I picked this up in the UK on that the 2004 trip. I'm getting confused here with my years. They kind of overlap, those 3 tours to London. But I love this album. There was a different edition. I think they cropped out the Machine Gun. But I'm sure this one went over big in America. But, he's got his great songwriting, again, his sense of humor. I think it's one of his better albums as well. Of course, I like the early Sire albums that came out in the States here. But Morrissey, again, it's too bad his wankerism has taken over in terms of him not always showing up, and difficult with delivering records to labels and getting dropped and picked up and dropped again. And, because the guy's a talent, and, that's I could do a whole video with others just ranting about Morrissey and talking about Morrissey. But the reason in 2005 that my buddy Ron and I went to see, again, my second time to the Royal Albert Hall, the Cream Royal Albert Hall reunion tour. In a way, this was sort of you could call it the Ginger Baker benefit tour, where he raised, I think, $7 million just for Ginger Baker, who pissed it away on horses or something in South Africa. May 2005, they played 4 shows. Ron and I went to the second show. I remember hearing that, I think it was Eric had a little bit of a cold or something. So it was a wonderful show. It was great. I liked the Cream. And if you start comparing this to Wheels on Fire, the live versions, you could be disappointed because there's heat in the live versions in 1968 of them. Was it Winterland or Fillmore? There's heat in that. And Eric Clapton is playing his SG back then, and just, they're grooving when they're doing like Crossroads and Spoonful and just everything, even Toad. It's just a wonderful live record there. And this was a great show, great live event. There were maybe 25% slower on every tune. Of course, they are quite at 50 years later, plus older. So, and also Eric Clapton was playing Blackie, the Stratocaster, and a lot of people were disappointed that he wasn't playing the SG. It has a different sound, obviously. But they sounded great. Jack Bruce always has one of the beautiful voices, and I'm so glad I went to this. I never saw Cream back in the day, back during their original tenure, which was really hard to do because they were, what, 2 years, 3 years tops? Not even that. Not 2.5 years. That was it. Out. Next, next project. I like the band. I'm going to start Blind Faith, whatever. This is the soundtrack that came out a couple years later, which beautiful cover. John Hammersfeld, a great poster artist, an American, who's done a lot of great things, did the poster and the iconography for this, and I just love this. This was a great event, and Ron and I just walked around London. We went to restaurants and bars and hung around, and I realized I didn't buy a lot of music on that trip. It was just, again, it was mostly the art museums, going to, again, the Portrait Gallery and the Tate Modern and the Tate, the British Tate now it's called, all the Tates, all the Tates and all the museums. I mean, you could just go to museums every, 3 times a day in London and enjoy it. So I didn't really buy a lot. I don't even remember what I bought. I know I probably bought some CDs, but they weren't anything special that really, was the soundtrack for that trip. And then we cut to last week, 2024, going and meeting all the wonderful blokes from the UK and Belgium, and had just a great time. So thanks for watching. If you want to know about 2024, you can watch all the other videos that showcases that. I just wanted to, send out my love to London. I just love that city. And like any major city in the world, one of the great cities, it's not without its problems, its issues, its craziness. But I think that is what makes it vibrant and makes it so great. And I'm not apologist for these cities like this. I just think they're great cities, and it's great to live in a time that I can experience this. So thanks everyone for watching, and no more London for a while, I promise. Mazzy loves you. Take care.